The champagne glass shattered against my marble floor at 11:47 p.m. on a Tuesday night, the exact moment I realized my wife of 15 years had been destroying our family from the inside out. My name is Marcus, and I'm about to tell you how I went from kissing my children goodnight in our $8 million Hollywood Hills mansion to sitting alone in that same house 3 months later, with my kids refusing to speak to me and my wife's laughter echoing in my memory like a death sentence. You think you know betrayal? You think you've seen a marriage crumble? I thought I did too, until I found Sarah's second phone hidden inside our daughter's old teddy bear. The same bear Emma had been clutching during her therapy sessions, the sessions I thought were helping her cope with our amicable divorce. The photos on that phone didn't just show my wife with another man. They showed her with our man, my business partner, my best friend since college, the godfather to my children. But that wasn't the worst part. The worst part was the messages, the planning, the systematic destruction of everything I'd built, not just financially, but emotionally. Sarah hadn't just been cheating on me. She'd been playing a game so calculated, so cruel, that it turned my own children into weapons against me. I remember the exact moment I saw the message that read, "Phase 3 complete. The kids now believe everything we discussed. Marcus will never recover from this." That was the night I realized I hadn't just lost my wife. I'd been at war with her for years without even knowing it. While I was building a tech empire worth over $50 million, working 18-hour days to give my family everything, she was building my execution chamber, brick by brick, lie by lie. My daughter Emma, who used to run to me every morning with her arms wide open, now won't even look at me. My son Jake, who wanted to follow in my footsteps and start his own company, now calls me a monster. And the worst part, they're not wrong to hate me, because Sarah made sure they had every reason to, using truths I'd confided in her against me, twisting my vulnerabilities into evidence of my failures as a father. I've never told this story before. Part of me wanted to take it to my grave, to protect what little dignity I had left. But I realized that staying silent was exactly what she wanted. And maybe, just maybe, if I can show you how a successful man can be completely destroyed by someone he trusted with his life, I can save someone else from walking into the same beautiful trap I did. What you're about to hear over the next 10 chapters will ruin your faith in people you trust. It ruined mine. But I need you to understand that behind every fortune, behind every family photo, behind every perfect marriage, there might be someone playing a game you don't even know exists. This is my testimony. This is my warning. And this is how one woman's secret didn't just break my heart. It obliterated everything I thought I knew about the people I loved most. If you've ever felt betrayed by someone you trusted completely, hit that like button and let me know in the comments. Your support gives me the strength to keep sharing these painful truths. Subscribe to this channel, because over the next 10 chapters, I'm going to show you exactly how Sarah destroyed our family, and how she almost destroyed me. But I promise you this, I'm not going down without a fight. The champagne glass shattered against my marble floor at 11:47 p.m. on a Tuesday night, and with it, every illusion I'd built about my life crumbled into 1,000 glittering pieces. I stood there in my silk pajamas, barefoot among the shards, holding Sarah's second phone like it was radioactive material. The device felt impossibly heavy in my trembling hands, each message I'd just read burning itself into my memory with surgical precision. Phase 3 complete. The kids now believe everything we discussed. Marcus will never recover from this. The text was sent to a number I recognized immediately. David's number, my business partner, my best friend since college, the man who'd been my best man at our wedding, who'd held my children when they were born, who'd sat across from me at dinner just 3 nights ago, asking with apparent genuine concern how I was holding up during the divorce. I sank into my leather chair, the same one where I'd signed the contracts that made me worth $50 million. The same chair where I'd held Emma on her first day of school, where I'd taught Jake to tie his shoes, where I'd kissed Sarah goodnight 1,000 times. Now it felt like an electric chair, and I was about to be executed for crimes I didn't even know I'd committed. Sarah had been planning this for months. The messages painted a picture so methodical, so perfectly orchestrated, that I felt sick admiration for her intelligence. She'd documented every conversation, every weakness I'd confided in her, every moment of vulnerability I'd shared during our 18-year marriage. She'd cataloged my fears about not being present enough for the kids, my guilt about working too much, my desperate need for their approval. She'd weaponized my love for them. The phone buzzed in my hand, a new message from David. "How's he taking it?" Sarah's reply came instantly. "Better than expected. He actually thinks this is about the affair. He has no idea what's really coming." I scrolled through weeks of messages, each one revealing another layer of betrayal. They'd coached the children on what to say during therapy sessions. They'd planted evidence of my supposed anger issues. They'd systematically isolated me from friends and family, making everyone believe I was having some kind of breakdown. I wasn't having a breakdown. I was being systematically destroyed. The worst part wasn't the affair. I could have survived that. The worst part was realizing that while I'd been building a life, Sarah had been building a trap. Every family dinner, every bedtime story, every "I love you" had been performed while she planned my annihilation. She turned my own children into ammunition against me. My daughter Emma, who used to run to me every morning with her arms wide open, now won't even look at me. Standing there among the glass shards, I made a decision that would change everything. I wasn't going to let her win. I wasn't going to disappear quietly into the night while she rewrote our family's history. If Sarah wanted to play games, I'd learn the rules. I would fight back. Finding that phone was pure accident, the kind of cosmic joke that makes you question whether someone upstairs is trying to help you or destroy you completely. I'd been cleaning out Emma's room, boxing up her childhood things for storage since she'd moved in with Sarah temporarily 3 months ago. The finality of folding her clothes, packing away her books, felt like burying her alive. Emma's teddy bear, Mr. Buttons, sat on her bed, the same bear she'd clutched during every therapy session. I picked it up, remembering how she used to make me give it a voice during bedtime stories. But something felt wrong. The bear was heavier than I remembered, and there was a strange bulge in its stomach. When I unzipped the hidden compartment I'd never noticed before, my hands found cold metal and plastic. Sarah's second phone. The device was still logged in, still warm from recent use. My wife, my soon-to-be ex-wife, had been so confident in her victory that she'd grown careless. Or maybe she wanted me to find it. Maybe this was part of her plan too. The first message I saw made my blood freeze. "David, he's asking Emma about the bruises again. Remind her to stick to the story about falling off her bike. We can't have any inconsistencies now." Bruises. What bruises? Emma had never mentioned any bruises to me. But as I scrolled through the messages, I saw the elaborate fiction they'd constructed. They'd told the therapist, the judge, our friends, everyone, that I'd been physically abusive. They'd coached Emma to lie about injuries that never existed, to cry on command, to flinch when I reached for her. My own daughter had been trained to fear me. The messages revealed everything. How Sarah had been recording our private conversations for months, editing them to make me sound unstable. How she'd been drugging my coffee with anxiety medication to make me appear paranoid during court hearings. How she'd been systematically destroying my relationships with everyone who mattered. She'd convinced my mother that I was having a nervous breakdown. She'd told my business clients that I was unreliable. She'd made Emma believe that I'd hurt her. I sat on my daughter's bed, surrounded by the remnants of her childhood, and felt something inside me break that would never heal. This wasn't just betrayal. This was psychological warfare. Sarah hadn't just cheated on me. She'd orchestrated my complete destruction with the precision of a military operation. Every conversation we'd had during the divorce proceedings had been a performance. When she'd cried about how difficult this was for her, she'd been acting. When she'd begged me to think about the children, she'd been manipulating me. When she'd suggested we try to keep things amicable, she'd been buying time to plant more evidence against me. I'd been fighting a war without knowing I was on the battlefield. The phone buzzed again. Another message from David. "Marcus is getting suspicious. Maybe we should accelerate the timeline." Sarah's response chilled me to the bone. "Don't worry. After tomorrow's therapy session, Emma will tell Dr. Morrison about the incident. That should be enough to get the restraining order. He'll never see his children again." Tomorrow was Thursday. Today was Wednesday. I had less than 24 hours to stop them from taking my children away forever. But how do you fight an enemy who's spent months poisoning everyone against you? How do you prove your innocence when the evidence has been fabricated by someone who knows you better than you know yourself? I looked at my daughter's empty room and realized I was about to lose everything. Dr. Morrison's office smelled like vanilla candles and broken dreams. I sat in the familiar chair across from the woman who'd been helping my family navigate our divorce for 3 months. The same woman who'd written reports describing me as emotionally volatile and potentially dangerous to my children. Now I knew why. She'd been getting her information from Sarah. Emma sat curled in the corner of the couch, her small body rigid with rehearsed fear. My heart shattered watching her perform terror of me, her own father, with the skill of a trained actress. She wouldn't meet my eyes, wouldn't respond to my gentle questions, wouldn't even acknowledge my presence except to flinch when I moved too quickly. They'd trained her to fear me. "Emma, can you tell me about last weekend when you were with your father?" Dr. Morrison's voice was soft, professionally concerned. I watched my daughter's face transform, her features arranging themselves into an expression of carefully crafted trauma. He got angry again. He threw his phone at the wall. He said bad words about Mommy. He grabbed my arm too tight. It hurt. Each lie felt like a physical blow. I wanted to scream, to shake her, to demand she tell the truth, but I couldn't. Any reaction would only confirm their narrative about my instability. So I sat there, paralyzed, watching my daughter bury me alive with words that had been placed in her mouth like poison. Dr. Morrison was writing everything down. "And how did that make you feel, Emma?" The therapist's pen moved across her notepad with practiced efficiency. I realized she wasn't documenting my daughter's trauma. She was building a case against me. "Scared. I don't want to go to Daddy's house anymore." The words hit me like a freight train. Emma had loved our weekends together. She'd count down the days until Friday, planning activities, begging me to let her friends come over. Now she was sitting 3 feet away from me, performing terror so convincingly that I almost believed it myself. Sarah had turned my own child into a weapon. "Marcus, how do you respond to Emma's concerns?" Dr. Morrison's eyes were cold, judgmental. I understood now that this wasn't therapy. It was a tribunal, and I'd already been found guilty. I tried to speak, but my voice caught in my throat. "I never hurt her. I would never hurt my children." "Emma, you know Daddy loves you, right? Please, sweetheart, just look at me. Tell Dr. Morrison about the park last weekend. Remember how we fed the ducks?" But Emma just shook her head, tears streaming down her face. Real tears, I realized. She was crying because she was trapped in this lie, forced to destroy the father she'd once adored. Sarah had made her complicit in my destruction, and the weight of that betrayal was crushing her small shoulders. Dr. Morrison closed her notepad with finality. I think it's best if we suspend your visits for now, Marcus. Emma clearly needs time to process her feelings in a safe environment. Her words sounded official, rehearsed. I wondered how much Sarah had paid her, or if she genuinely believed she was protecting my daughter from a monster. I looked at Emma one last time. Her small face was streaked with tears, her eyes finally meeting mine for just a moment. In that split second, I saw the truth. She knew she was lying. She knew she was destroying me, and she hated herself for it. "I'm sorry, Daddy." The words were barely a whisper, but they contained everything: her guilt, her fear, her desperation to make this stop. But it was too late. Dr. Morrison was already reaching for her phone, probably calling Sarah to report that Phase 3 was complete. As I walked out of that office, I realized I hadn't just lost my children. I'd lost my daughter's innocence, my son's trust, and my own faith in everything I thought I knew about love and family. But here's what I need you to understand. When someone you trust completely betrays you, when they use your own children as weapons against you, how far would you go to get them back? David's office felt like a mausoleum, all mahogany and leather and the lingering scent of expensive cologne that couldn't quite mask the stench of betrayal. I sat across from the man who'd been my partner for 8 years, my best friend for 20, watching him shuffle through quarterly reports with the same hands that had been texting my wife about my destruction. He had no idea I'd found the phone. "Marcus, you look terrible. This divorce is really taking a toll on you." His voice carried the perfect note of concern, the kind of sympathy that makes you want to confess your deepest fears. I'd fallen for it 1,000 times before, telling him about my insecurities, my guilt about working too much, my desperate need to be a good father. Every vulnerability I'd shared had been ammunition. "I'm managing," I said, watching his face carefully. He was good. I had to give him that. No tells, no nervous gestures, no guilty glances. He looked exactly like the concerned friend I'd believed him to be for 2 decades. But I'd seen the messages. "Marcus is getting suspicious about the kid's behavior. We might need to move faster. The financial records are ready. He'll be lucky to keep the house after this. Sarah's doing brilliant work. He actually thinks this is just about the affair. By the time we're done, he'll have lost everything." "You know," David leaned back in his chair, "Sarah's been calling me. She's worried about you. Says you've been unstable lately." He paused, letting the word hang in the air between us. "Maybe you should consider taking some time off. Let me handle the business for a while." There it was, the final piece of their puzzle. Not only were they destroying my family, they were stealing my company. The business I'd built from nothing, the empire that had consumed my life for a decade, was about to be handed over to my best friend on a silver platter. "She thinks you might do something drastic. The kids are scared of you, Marcus. Everyone's concerned about your mental state. Maybe it's time to step back. Think about what's best for everyone." Each word was a carefully placed stone in the wall they'd built around me. I'd been so focused on fighting for my children that I'd missed the corporate coup happening right under my nose. They hadn't just stolen my wife and kids. They'd stolen my identity, my purpose, my life's work. I wanted to lunge across the desk and strangle him, but I couldn't. Any display of anger would only confirm their narrative. So I sat there, nodding thoughtfully, playing the part of the unstable husband who was finally seeing reason. "Maybe you're right. Maybe I do need some time." David's eyes lit up with what he probably thought was relief, but looked more like victory. "Good, good. I'll take care of everything. You just focus on getting better." He reached across the desk to pat my shoulder, the same gesture he'd made when my father died, when I'd gotten divorced the first time, when I'd doubted myself 1,000 times over the years. He'd been there for every moment of weakness, and now he was using them all against me. "There's just one thing," I said, standing up slowly. "I need to collect some personal files from my office. Nothing business-related, just some family photos and documents. Of course, take your time." He walked me to my office, chatting about normal things, the weather, the Lakers, plans for the weekend. All the while, I was thinking about the hidden safe behind my diploma, the one David didn't know about, the one that contained copies of everything: contracts, financial records, phone logs, security footage, evidence. As I packed my things, I realized that Sarah and David had made one crucial mistake. They'd assumed I was the same trusting fool who'd let them into my life, my home, my heart. They'd underestimated the man who'd built a $50 million empire from nothing. They'd forgotten that I knew how to fight. Walking out of that office, carrying a box of personal items that included a hard drive full of incriminating evidence, I felt something I hadn't experienced in months: hope. Jake's voice on the phone was cold, distant, nothing like the warm enthusiasm he'd always shown when calling his dad. At 15, he'd been my mini-me, ambitious and driven, talking about starting his own tech company someday. Now he sounded like a stranger reading from a script. "I don't want to see you anymore." The words hit me like a physical blow. My son, my firstborn, the boy who'd worshipped me since he could walk, was cutting me out of his life with the clinical precision of a surgeon. "Jake, what's wrong? What happened?" "You know what happened. You know what you did." "I don't understand. Can we talk about this in person?" "Mom showed me the recordings. I heard you screaming at her. I heard you threatening Emma. I heard everything, Dad." My mind raced. Recordings? What recordings? Then I remembered Sarah's second phone, the messages about recording our conversations. They'd been building a case against me for months, editing my voice, taking my words out of context, creating evidence of abuse that never happened. "Jake, whatever you heard, it's not what you think. Stop lying." His voice cracked with emotion, and I heard something that destroyed me. He was crying. My strong, stoic son was sobbing on the other end of the line, and I was the cause of his pain. "You hurt Emma. You hurt Mom. You hurt all of us. I don't know who you are anymore. I used to want to be like you. Now, I'm ashamed to have your name." Each word was a dagger to my heart. Sarah had done more than turn my children against me. She'd shattered my son's faith in everything he'd believed about his father. She'd taken the boy who'd proudly told his friends that his dad was his hero and turned him into a young man who was ashamed of his own last name. "Please, Jake, let me explain." "There's nothing to explain. I've seen the evidence. I've heard the recordings. I know what kind of man you really are. Don't call me anymore. Don't come to my school. Don't try to contact Emma. We're done." The line went dead. I sat there in my empty house, holding the phone like it might somehow bring back the son I'd lost. But Jake was gone, just like Emma, just like everything else that had mattered to me. I called him back, but he'd blocked my number. I tried Emma's phone, but she'd blocked me too. I sent emails, but they bounced back. I drove to Sarah's house, but the restraining order kept me away. I was completely cut off from my own children. They'd done it. Sarah and David had successfully erased me from my children's lives. I'd become a cautionary tale, a monster in their childhood story. The father who disappointed them so profoundly that they'd rather have no father at all. But I knew the truth. Sitting in my car outside Sarah's house, watching the lights in the windows where my children were living their lives without me, I made a decision that would change everything. I wasn't going to let them destroy my family with lies. I wasn't going to let them steal my children's love with fabricated evidence and manipulated emotions. I was going to fight back. But first, I needed to understand exactly what I was fighting against. I needed to know every detail of their plan, every lie they'd told, every piece of evidence they'd manufactured. Only then could I begin to dismantle the elaborate fiction they'd built around my life. I pulled out the hard drive I'd taken from my office. I opened my laptop. I began to research. I started to plan. I prepared for war. When everything you've built, everyone you love, and every truth you've believed in is stripped away by the people you trusted most, what would you do to get it back? The security footage from my office building painted a picture that made my blood run cold. I'd spent 3 sleepless nights analyzing every frame, every timestamp, every detail of Sarah and David's secret meetings. They'd been using my own conference room to plan my destruction, meeting twice a week for months while I was traveling for business. They'd been in my space, breathing my air, plotting my downfall. The first recording was from 6 months ago, just after Sarah and I had started having problems. I watched my wife, the woman who'd promised to love me in sickness and in health, spread documents across my conference table like a general planning a military campaign. Financial records, custody evaluations, psychological profiles, phone logs, email transcripts, a complete blueprint for my destruction. David sat beside her, his hand resting on her thigh with casual intimacy that made me want to vomit. But it was their conversation that truly sickened me. They weren't just having an affair. They were dissecting my life with clinical precision, identifying every weakness, every vulnerability, every pressure point they could exploit. He's obsessed with being a good father. That's our way in. The kids worship him. If we can change that, he'll crumble. Emma's the key. She's more malleable than Jake. We need to make him look unstable in court. The business is worth more than the house. We should focus there. I watched them plan my emotional assassination with the detachment of scientists studying a lab rat. They knew exactly which buttons to push, which fears to exploit, which relationships to poison. They'd mapped out my entire psychological profile and designed a strategy to dismantle me piece by piece. Sarah had brought photos of our children. She spread them across the table like playing cards, analyzing each image for potential leverage. Emma at her school play, Jake at his soccer game, family vacations, birthday parties, all the moments that represented my deepest joy were being weaponized against me. He'll do anything to protect them. We can use that. If we make him seem dangerous, he'll lose custody automatically. The restraining order will isolate him completely. By the time we're done, he'll be lucky to see them once a month. And that's only if he doesn't fight us. The footage from 3 months ago showed them celebrating. Sarah had brought champagne, and they were toasting something that had clearly gone according to plan. I enhanced the audio, straining to hear their words over the background noise. Emma's therapy session went perfectly. She's completely convinced that he hurt her. Dr. Morrison bought every word. The report will be devastating. Jake's starting to question his father too. Kids believe what they're told to believe. Marcus has no idea what's coming. To phase 3. They clinked glasses, and I watched my wife kiss my best friend while sitting in the chair where I'd made the biggest decisions of my career. The symbolism was perfect. They'd invaded my professional space to destroy my personal life, turning my own office into the headquarters of their conspiracy. But they'd made one crucial mistake. In their arrogance, they'd assumed I was too trusting, too broken, too defeated to fight back. They'd underestimated the man who'd built a business empire from nothing, who'd survived hostile takeovers, who'd outmaneuvered competitors worth billions. They'd forgotten that I knew how to win. The hard drive contained everything: financial records showing how they'd been siphoning money from our joint accounts, email exchanges revealing their legal strategy, phone logs proving their coordination, and most importantly, the original, unedited recordings of my conversations with Sarah. I had evidence of their fraud. I had proof of their manipulation. I had documentation of their conspiracy. I had the weapons I needed to destroy them. Sitting in my home office at 3 a.m., surrounded by printouts and documents and the detritus of my demolished life, I felt something I hadn't experienced in months: the cold satisfaction of a plan coming together. Sarah and David had played a brilliant game, but they'd been playing against the wrong opponent. They'd awakened something in me that I'd forgotten existed. The killer instinct that had built my empire. The ruthless focus that had crushed my competition. The strategic mind that had turned nothing into everything. They wanted to destroy me. Instead, they'd created their own worst nightmare. The private investigator's report landed on my desk like a nuclear bomb. Rebecca Chen was the best in the business, the kind of woman who could find dirt on a saint and had helped more than one desperate parent regain custody of their children. What she'd uncovered about Sarah and David's activities made my carefully planned revenge look like child's play. Sarah had been embezzling money from the company for 2 years. David had been falsifying financial records to cover her tracks. They'd been planning to flee to Switzerland with over $3 million. The children were supposed to disappear with them. I was supposed to be destroyed so completely that no one would believe my claims. Rebecca's surveillance photos showed them at banks, lawyers' offices, and private airports. They weren't just stealing my life. They were preparing to vanish with my children and my fortune, leaving me as a cautionary tale about unstable executives who'd lost everything. But I had something they didn't expect. I had the truth. I had evidence. I had nothing left to lose. And I had a plan. The first phase was simple. I hired the best family law attorney in the city, a woman named Victoria Ross, who specialized in cases involving parental alienation and false accusations. She was expensive, ruthless, and had a reputation for dismantling false narratives with surgical precision. "Your wife is good," Victoria said, reviewing the evidence, "but she's not that good." The therapy sessions were coached. The recordings were edited. The financial records were falsified. The whole thing is a house of cards, and we're about to burn it down. The second phase was more complex. I needed to document everything, every interaction, every conversation, every moment of my children's manipulated behavior. I installed hidden cameras in my own home, recorded every phone call, kept detailed logs of every attempt to contact Emma and Jake. I was building a case not just for custody, but for fraud, for conspiracy, for child abuse, for theft, for destruction of family. The third phase was the most dangerous. I had to continue playing the role of the defeated husband while secretly gathering evidence. I let David think he was taking over the company while I documented his illegal activities. I let Sarah believe she'd won while I prepared to expose her lies. Every day was a performance. Every conversation was a trap. Every interaction was recorded. Every move was calculated. I was becoming the kind of man I'd never wanted to be. The breakthrough came when Rebecca discovered Sarah's third phone, the one she used to coordinate with the therapist, the one that contained evidence of Dr. Morrison's involvement in the conspiracy. The messages were devastating, showing how they'd coached Emma to lie, how they'd bribed the therapist to write false reports, how they'd systematically destroyed my relationship with my children. Emma's getting suspicious. She's asking too many questions about why Daddy can't visit. Give her the anxiety medication in her juice. It'll make her more compliant. Jake's starting to doubt the story. Maybe we should separate the kids. The judge is sympathetic to our case. One more therapy session should seal it. Marcus will never recover from this. He'll probably kill himself. The last message made me physically ill. They hadn't just planned to destroy my life. They'd planned to push me to suicide. They'd calculated that a dead father would be easier to explain to the children than a living one who might someday prove his innocence. but I wasn't going to die. I was going to fight. I was going to win. I was going to get my children back. And I was going to make them pay. That night, I called Victoria Ross. "I'm ready to file," I said, looking at the mountain of evidence spread across my desk. "Let's destroy them." "With pleasure," she replied. "They have no idea what's coming. By the time we're done, they'll be the ones losing everything. Your children will know the truth. And you'll have your family back." The courtroom was packed with everyone who'd believed Sarah's lies about me. I sat beside Victoria Ross, watching my former friends and colleagues file in, their faces showing the mixture of pity and disgust I'd grown accustomed to over the past 6 months. They'd all heard the stories: the violent husband, the unstable father, the man who'd lost his mind and threatened his own children. Today, they would learn the truth. Sarah entered with her legal team, looking perfectly composed in a conservative blue dress that screamed, "Protective Mother." She'd mastered the art of appearing vulnerable yet strong, broken yet brave. David sat behind her, playing the role of the supportive friend who'd stepped in to help a woman in crisis. They had no idea what was coming. Emma and Jake sat in the front row, their faces carefully neutral. My heart broke seeing them there, forced to witness their parents' destruction, caught between competing versions of reality. Emma clutched a small stuffed animal, not Mr. Buttons, but something new, something that probably didn't contain hidden phones. My children looked at me like I was a stranger, a dangerous stranger, a man to be feared. But that was about to change. Victoria stood up, her voice carrying the authority of someone who'd never lost a case she believed in. "Your Honor, we're here today because Marcus Chen has been the victim of one of the most elaborate and cruel deceptions I've ever encountered. Over the next few hours, we will prove that the petitioner, Sarah Chen, in collaboration with David Morrison, has engaged in a systematic campaign of fraud, manipulation, and child abuse designed to destroy my client's relationship with his children." Sarah's lawyer objected. The judge overruled. Victoria continued, "We will show that the therapy sessions were coached, that the recordings were edited, that the financial records were falsified, that the children were manipulated and drugged, that this entire case is built on lies." The first piece of evidence was the security footage from my office building. The judge watched in silence as Sarah and David planned my destruction, their voices clear and damning as they discussed how to turn my children against me. "Emma's the key. She's more malleable than Jake. We need to make him look unstable in court. The kids believe what they're told to believe. Marcus has no idea what's coming. By the time we're done, he'll be lucky to see them once a month." I watched Sarah's face as her own words condemned her. The composed mask slipped for just a moment, revealing something cold and calculating underneath. This was the woman I'd loved for 15 years, the mother of my children, the person I'd trusted with my deepest secrets. This was the woman who tried to destroy me. The second piece of evidence was the unedited recordings of my conversations with Sarah. Victoria played them side by side with the versions that had been presented to the court. The difference was startling. Where the edited versions showed an angry, threatening husband, the originals revealed a man desperately trying to save his marriage and protect his children. They made me sound like a monster. They turned my love into evidence of abuse. They weaponized my vulnerability. They stole my voice and used it against me. They made me hate the sound of my own words. The third piece of evidence was Dr. Morrison's involvement. Victoria presented the messages between Sarah and the therapist, showing how they'd coached Emma to lie, how they'd bribed the doctor to write false reports, how they'd systematically destroyed my relationship with my daughter. Emma's getting suspicious. She's asking too many questions about why Daddy can't visit. Give her the anxiety medication in her juice. It'll make her more compliant. The judge is sympathetic to our case, One more therapy session should seal it. Marcus will never recover from this. He'll probably kill himself. The courtroom erupted. People were shouting, crying, demanding justice. But I only had eyes for my children. Emma was sobbing, her small body shaking with the weight of what she'd been forced to do. Jake looked stunned, his face pale with the realization that everything he'd believed about his father was a lie. They'd been victims too. Victims of their own mother's manipulation. Victims of a conspiracy that had used them as weapons. Victims of a system that had failed to protect them. But they were still my children, and I was still their father. And today, the truth had finally set us free. The guilty verdicts hit like thunder in the packed courtroom. Sarah, guilty of fraud, conspiracy, child endangerment, and perjury. David, guilty of embezzlement, conspiracy, and accessory to fraud. Dr. Morrison, guilty of professional misconduct and conspiracy. The judge's voice was cold as she read the sentences. Prison time for all of them, financial restitution, and the complete destruction of their carefully constructed lies. But I felt no satisfaction, only emptiness, only the hollow victory of being right about something I'd prayed I was wrong about. Emma ran to me the moment the judge dismissed the court. My daughter, my beautiful, damaged daughter, threw herself into my arms with a force that nearly knocked me over. She was sobbing, her small body shaking with months of suppressed guilt and fear. "I'm sorry, Daddy. I'm so sorry. I knew it was wrong, but Mommy said you'd be angry. She said you'd hurt me if I told the truth. She gave me medicine that made me sleepy. She made me practice lying. I never wanted to hurt you. I love you so much. Please don't hate me." Each word was a dagger to my heart. My daughter had been carrying this burden for months, forced to choose between her parents, manipulated into becoming a weapon against the father she loved. I held her tight, feeling her tears soak through my shirt, and whispered the words I'd been dying to say for months. "I could never hate you, sweetheart. You're my daughter. I love you no matter what. You were brave to tell the truth. None of this was your fault. Mommy was sick, and she made bad choices. But we're going to be okay now." Jake stood a few feet away, his 15-year-old pride warring with his need for his father's forgiveness. He'd been the one who'd cut me off completely, who'd said he was ashamed to have my name. Now he looked lost, vulnerable, like the little boy who used to climb into my lap when he had nightmares. "Dad, I believed her. I believed all of it. I said terrible things to you. I thought you were a monster. I was so angry, so confused. I didn't know what to believe anymore. Can you ever forgive me?" I reached for him, and he collapsed against me. This strong young man who'd been forced to grow up too fast, who'd been made to choose sides in a war he didn't understand. We stood there in the courthouse hallway, the three of us clinging to each other like survivors of a shipwreck. The media was everywhere, cameras flashing, reporters shouting questions, headlines already writing themselves. Tech CEO vindicated in custody battle. Wife's elaborate deception exposed. Children reunited with father after months of manipulation. But I didn't care about the headlines. I didn't care about the vindication. I only cared about the two broken children in my arms, the family I'd fought so hard to save, the love that had survived months of systematic destruction. We had a long road ahead of us. Therapy sessions to undo the damage, trust to rebuild, memories to replace, hearts to heal. But we were together, and that was enough. That night, I tucked Emma into her old bed for the first time in 6 months. She was afraid to sleep alone, afraid of the nightmares that had been plaguing her since the trial began. Jake sat on the floor beside her bed, reading her a story like he used to when she was little. "Daddy, will Mommy go to prison?" "Yes, sweetheart. She broke the law." Will I ever see her again? Maybe someday, when you're older and ready. Do you hate her? No, baby. I'm angry and hurt, but I don't hate her. She's still your mother, and she loves you in her own way. But she made very bad choices. And now she has to face the consequences. As I kissed Emma goodnight and hugged Jake, I realized that Sarah's greatest crime wasn't the fraud, or the theft, or even the lies. Her greatest crime was forcing our children to choose between their parents, making them complicit in their own family's destruction. But children are resilient. Love is stronger than lies. Truth has a way of surfacing, and families can heal, even from the deepest wounds. 6 months later, I sat in my backyard watching Emma play with her friends, her laughter carrying across the yard like music I'd almost forgotten how to hear. The sound of my daughter's joy was worth every sleepless night, every legal battle, every moment of doubt I'd endured during the darkest period of my life. She was healing. We were all healing, slowly, carefully, but genuinely. Jake had started his senior year of high school with a new confidence, no longer carrying the weight of his mother's lies. He'd thrown himself into his studies and his college applications, determined to build something positive from the wreckage of our family's destruction. Last week, he'd asked me to help him with his personal essay about overcoming adversity. I want to write about learning to trust again, he'd said, about how lies can poison a family, about how truth can set you free, about how my dad never gave up on us, about how love really can conquer hate. Dr. Rodriguez, our new family therapist, had warned me that healing would be a long process. The children would need time to process their trauma, to understand that they were victims too, to learn to trust their own perceptions again. Emma still had nightmares sometimes, still asked questions about why her mother had hurt us. But she was asking the questions now. She was talking instead of lying. She was healing instead of hiding. She was choosing truth over fiction. She was choosing love over fear. The business had survived, though it had taken months to repair the damage David had done. I'd implemented new security measures, hired a new CFO, and rebuilt the company culture around transparency and trust. The irony wasn't lost on me. Having my professional life nearly destroyed by betrayal had made me a better leader, a more careful businessman, a more grateful employer. But success meant nothing without family. Money meant nothing without love. Achievement meant nothing without someone to share it with. I'd learned that the hard way. Sarah had been sentenced to 5 years in prison, though she'd probably serve less with good behavior. She'd written me letters from jail, rambling, semi-coherent attempts at apology that revealed more about her mental state than her remorse. I'd read them all, then filed them away unopened. The children deserved to know their mother had tried to make amends, even if her attempts were inadequate. Emma asked if she could visit her mother. Jake said he wasn't ready. I respected both of their choices. Children heal at their own pace, in their own way, on their own terms. The most difficult part of our recovery had been learning to trust again, not just each other, but our own perceptions, our own feelings, our own judgment. Sarah's manipulation had been so complete, so sophisticated, that we'd all questioned our own memories, our own experiences, our own truth. But truth has a way of asserting itself. Love has a way of surviving. Families have a way of healing, even from the deepest betrayals, even from the most elaborate deceptions, even from the most painful wounds. Tonight, as I tuck Emma into bed and say goodnight to Jake, I'm struck by how ordinary this moment feels. There are no hidden phones, no secret recordings, no elaborate conspiracies. Just a father and his children, safe in their home, surrounded by love instead of lies. This is what we fought for. This is what we won. This is what matters. This is what lasts. This is what heals. This is what love looks like. When it survives everything. When it conquers everything. When it redeems everything. When it restores everything. When it saves everything. If this story has touched your heart, if you've ever experienced betrayal by someone you trusted completely, or if you believe that love can survive even the deepest wounds, please hit that like button and let me know in the comments. Share your own stories of healing, of fighting for what matters, of never giving up on the people you love. And subscribe to this channel because stories like these, stories of pain and redemption, of loss and recovery, of families that refuse to stay broken, these are the stories that remind us that no matter how dark the night gets, dawn always comes. Thank you for listening, for caring, and for believing that love really can conquer hate. Until next time, hold your loved ones close, trust your instincts, and never stop fighting for what matters most.